Her father sold her like a commodity because of her infertility. A powerful and bitter millionaire bought her just to be a maid. He didn't want anyone to take the place of his dead wife. If you love love stories and romance, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and comment where you're listening from. Stay tuned. The cold cut through her skin like ground glass on that winter morning when Lily learned she was worth nothing. Her father, Walter, was sitting in the kitchen of the deteriorated wooden house, smoking a cheap cigarette while counting some crumpled bills on the table. She was 17, her body too thin for her age, with invisible scars from an infection that had destroyed her fallopian tubes when she was still a child. To him, this made her useless. A daughter who couldn't bear grandchildren was just a burden, another mouth to feed with no return. "You're leaving today," he said without looking at her, the words coming out like grey smoke. "I found you a job. Good people who will give you food and shelter. Better than staying here being a burden." Lily knew it was a lie. She had overheard the whispered conversations between her father and strange men who appeared at the door during sale. The early hours, words like merchandise, delivery, and payment floated in the air like vultures. She said nothing, just packed her few clothes in a cloth bag and waited. There was nowhere to run, no one who would care if she disappeared from the world. The truck arrived when the sun began to hide behind the mountains. 2 men got out, one fat with an unkempt beard, and another younger one with an empty stare. Walter received the money, counted bill by bill, and pushed Lily toward them. "Take good care of her," he said, but the tone was that of someone selling an unwanted pet. Lily climbed into the back of the truck where other girls were already seated, all with the same expression of fear and resignation. For 3 days, they were locked in a damp warehouse on the outskirts of Portland. The smell of mold and urine permeated the air. There were about 15 girls, all young, all with similar stories. Some cried softly, others remained in absolute silence, staring into nothingness. Lily huddled in a corner, hugging her knees, trying to make herself invisible. Each time the metal door opened, her heart stopped. Some girls left and never returned. She began to pray that death would arrive before humiliation. On the 4th day, the door creaked in a different way. A tall man appeared at the entrance, dressed in a lead-grey wool overcoat and black boots that shone even in the dim light. His eyes were dark, deep, but lacked the cruelty of the other men who passed through there. Alexander Reed was 43, owned one of the largest construction companies in the state, and was heir to lands in the mountains. A widower for 5 years, he was known for his coldness in business and total seclusion on his property, Highland Falls. He wasn't there to buy anyone. He had come only to resolve legal issues about the expropriation of the land that belonged to the criminal network. But when his eyes found Lily, sitting in the darkest corner, shivering from cold, something inside him broke. She was small, fragile, with dark hair stuck to her dirty face, but there was a strange dignity in her posture. Even there, in that degrading situation, she kept her head high. "That girl," said Alexander to the man accompanying him, a nervous lawyer who was sweating profusely. "She's sick." "They all are, Mr. Reed. Not our problem." Alexander stared at Lily for a long time. She didn't avert her gaze, just stared back at him with a courage she didn't know where came from. There was something in those eyes of his that wasn't pity or desire. It was recognition, as if he saw in her something she didn't know she possessed. "I'll take her," he said, surprising everyone, including himself. "Mr. Reed, that's not—" "I'll take her," he repeated more firmly. "Arrange the documentation." Lily didn't understand what was happening. She only felt a strong hand taking hers and pulling her out of that hell. The cold afternoon air made her cough, but it was the air of freedom, even if she didn't yet know what that meant. Alexander put her in the back seat of a dark, luxurious car, so different from the stinking truck that had brought her there. During the journey to the mountains, they didn't exchange a word. Lily looked out the window, watching the scenery change from slums to rich neighborhoods, then to mountain roads covered with forest. Alexander looked at her through the rearview mirror, trying to understand what had led him to do this. He didn't need anyone else in his life. He had employees, he had everything resolved. But there was something about that girl that deeply bothered him, a fragility that awakened in him, instincts he thought he had buried with his wife. Highland Falls rose. From the mountain mist like a castle of glass and marble. The property was immense, with geometric gardens, a central fountain, and huge windows that reflected the grey sky. Lily had never seen anything like it. When the car stopped at the main entrance, she hesitated to get out. Alexander got out first and opened the door for her, a gesture that confused her. No one had ever done that for her. "You'll stay here," he said, his voice deep and controlled. "Martha will take care of you." Martha was the housekeeper, a 60-year-old woman with grey hair tied in a bun and gentle eyes that contrasted with the severity of the environment. She received Lily with a discreet smile and led her into the mansion. The corridors were wide with marble floors that echoed each step. Expensive paintings decorated the walls, and a curved staircase led to the second floor. "Come, child," said Martha, guiding her down a side corridor. "First you need a bath and hot food." The room Martha showed her was small but comfortable. It had a single bed with clean white sheets, a small bedside table, and a window that overlooked the gardens. For Lily, who had spent her entire life sharing cramped and dirty spaces, it was a palace. Martha prepared a hot bath and brought clean clothes, soft fabric pants, and a wool sweater that smelled of fabric softener. "Mr. Alexander said you were sick," Martha commented, observing Lily's labored breathing. "I'll call the doctor early tomorrow." Lily just nodded. She still couldn't believe this was real. She expected to wake up at any moment back in the damp warehouse, or worse, to discover there was some terrible price to pay for this sudden kindness. But Martha treated her with genuine care, as if she were a person who mattered. After the bath, Martha took her to the kitchen. It was a spacious area, with granite countertops and gleaming appliances. The smell of home cooking made Lily's stomach growl loudly. She hadn't eaten a decent meal in days. Martha served a plate of rice, beans, chicken stew, and vegetables. Lily ate slowly, trying not to appear desperate, but each forkful was a small resurrection. "Slowly, child," said Martha, sitting beside her, "for the food won't run out." That's when Alexander entered the kitchen. He had exchanged the overcoat for a dark dress shirt and tailored pants, but still maintained that imposing aura. Lily stopped chewing and looked at him, tense. He served himself a coffee and watched her eat for a moment. "Do you have a name?" he asked, his voice neutral. "Lily," she replied, almost whispering. "Lily." He repeated the name as if testing its flavor. "You will help Martha with the house. Nothing heavy, just simple tasks. In exchange, you'll have food, shelter, and medical care." Lily nodded, but there was something in his tone that intrigued her. It wasn't charity. It was almost as if he were establishing the terms of an agreement, maintaining emotional distance, as if he were protecting himself from something. "Thank you," she murmured. Alexander studied her for another moment, then left the kitchen without another word. Martha sighed softly. "He's not bad, you know," she said. "He's just hurt." "Mrs. Emma, his wife, died 5 years ago. Cancer. He never really recovered." Lily absorbed the information in silence. She was beginning to understand his coldness, that controlled way of speaking. It was the armor of a man who had lost everything he loved. "And the children?" asked Lily. You'll meet them tomorrow. Sophie, Ethan, and Mia. Poor little angels. They also suffered a lot with their mother's death. Sophie, the oldest, hasn't spoken since then. Ethan has nightmares every night. And Mia. Mia draws sad birds. Lily finished eating and helped Martha wash the dishes. Her hands were trembling, not from cold, but from a strange mixture of relief and fear. Relief at being alive, clean fed, fear of what would come next. Nothing in her life had been free, there was always a price. That night, lying in the soft bed, Lily looked out the window at the garden illuminated by the moon. She could see the silhouette of the central fountain and the trees moving gently in the breeze. It was beautiful but also isolated. She wondered if Alexander had brought her there out of pity or something more. There was something in the way he looked at her that made her feel naked, as if he could see through all her defenses. He had saved her, that was undeniable. But salvation always came with its own chains. Lily closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but couldn't shake the feeling that her life had taken a direction she couldn't yet understand. She was in a golden cage, but still a cage. The difference was that this time perhaps she wanted to stay. The next morning, Lily woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. It was still dark outside, but she could no longer sleep. The doctor, Martha had called, arrived early, a kind elderly man who examined her breathing and prescribed antibiotics for the pneumonia that had settled in her lungs. After he left, Lily helped Martha prepare breakfast. That's when she met Alexander's children. Sophie came down first, an 8-year-old girl with long brown hair and large eyes that seemed to hold painful secrets. She looked at Lily with curiosity, but didn't say a word. Martha had told the truth. The girl hadn't spoken since her mother's death. Ethan came next, a 6-year-old boy with deep shadows under his eyes and a frightened manner. He hid behind Martha when he saw Lily. "Don't be afraid," Martha said softly. "This is Lily. She'll be staying with us." Mia, the youngest, came down last. She was 5 years old with curly hair that made her look like an angel, but her drawings told a different story. She carried a notebook full of birds with cut wings, all colored in shades of gray and black. Lily crouched to her height. "What? Beautiful drawings," she said in a soft voice. "Do you like birds?" Mia nodded, but her eyes were sad. "They can't fly," she murmured, "like Mommy." The comment made Lily swallow hard. These children carried deep wounds, visible in every gesture, every look. She understood that pain in a way few adults could understand. She too had felt like a bird with clipped wings throughout her life. Alexander appeared for breakfast, dressed in a dark suit, ready for another day of work. He kissed the forehead of each child, automatic but affectionate gestures. When his eyes met Lily's, she saw something she couldn't identify, a mixture of curiosity and resistance. "How do you feel today?" he asked. "Better, sir," replied Lily, keeping her eyes lowered. "Just Alexander," he corrected. "You're not an employee here." The words hung in the air, loaded with meaning. If she wasn't an employee, what exactly was she? Lily didn't ask. But the question troubled her all day. She helped Martha with simple tasks, folding clothes, organizing toys, preparing snacks for the children. It was light work, almost therapeutic after everything she had been through. During the afternoon, while the children napped, Lily went out to walk in the gardens. The mountain air was pure, cutting, and good for her damaged lungs. She discovered a small lake at the back of the property, surrounded by white magnolias. It was a place of absolute silence, where only the sound of running water broke the peace. That's where Alexander found her at the end of the day. He had returned from work and, not finding her in the house, went out to look for her. Lily was sitting on a rock by the lake, observing the crystalline water. She heard him coming, but didn't turn around. "You like quiet places," he commented, sitting on a nearby rock. "I always have," she replied. "Noisy places scare me." Alexander studied her profile. Even with her breathing still heavy from pneumonia, there was something serene about Lily that intrigued him. She didn't talk much, didn't ask for anything, didn't try to please. She just existed, with a natural dignity that he rarely saw in people who had gone through so much suffering. "Why did you bring me here?" she suddenly asked, still looking at the water. The question caught him off guard. He himself didn't know the complete answer. "You seem to need help," he finally said. "Many people need help. You don't go around saving everyone." Alexander was silent for a long time. There was something about that conversation that bothered him, a closeness he didn't want to allow. Since Emma's death, he had built high walls around his feelings. Work, children, responsibilities, everything kept in separate and secure compartments. "You remind me of someone," he finally said, his voice lower. "Your wife?" "No." The response was quick, almost defensive. Emma was come different, strong in another way. Lily turned to look at him for the first time. "How did she die?" "Cancer. 5 years of fighting." He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture that revealed tiredness. She was brave until the end, never complained, never gave up, even when she knew there was no more hope. It must have been very difficult for the children. It was difficult for all of us. Alexander stood up, signaling that the conversation had come to an end. "Let's go back. Martha must be preparing dinner." They walked back in silence, but something had changed between them. A first layer of formality had been removed. Lily was beginning to understand that Alexander hadn't saved her out of pity, but out of a need he didn't fully understand himself. And he was beginning to realize that she wasn't just an injured girl who needed care. There was a hidden strength in her, a silent wisdom born of suffering. This attracted and frightened him in equal measure. In the weeks that followed, Lily found her place in that strange house. Her silent presence began to bring small changes. Ethan stopped hiding when she came near, and even Sophie began to follow her with her eyes, as if interested in her activities. Mia was the first to truly approach, showing her somber drawings and accepting when Lily suggested that perhaps some birds could have whole wings. "Do you think they can fly?" asked Mia one afternoon, while drawing beside Lily. "I think all birds can fly if they find the right wind," replied Lily, helping the girl color the wings in lighter tones. Alexander observed these small transformations from afar. He would come home from work and see Lily in the garden with the children, or helping Martha in the kitchen, and feel a strange sense of completeness that he hadn't experienced in years. But he also felt anger. Anger at himself for allowing her to become important. Anger at her for awakening feelings he had sworn to bury. One night, after a particularly difficult meeting with investors, Alexander arrived home later than usual. The children were already asleep. Martha had retired and the house was quiet. He went straight to his office, a dark room lined with books and dominated by a mahogany desk where contracts and construction plans accumulated. He poured himself a whiskey and stood looking out the window at the garden illuminated by the moon. That's when he saw Lily walking among the magnolias, dressed in a white nightgown that Martha had bought for her. Her dark hair was loose, floating in the night breeze, and she looked like a benevolent ghost haunting his property. He watched her for a long time, drinking slowly, feeling a dangerous warmth grow inside him. Lily wasn't just an injured girl he had saved. She was a woman, young and beautiful in a wild and natural way, and he desired her with an intensity that frightened him. When she turned to go back to the house, her eyes met his through the office window. For a moment they stared at each other through the glass, separated by distance and by all the barriers he had built. Then she lowered her eyes and disappeared into the house. Alexander finished the whiskey in one gulp and tried to get back to work but couldn't concentrate. That image of Lily in the garden had awakened something primitive inside him, something he hadn't felt since the early years of marriage with Emma. But Emma was dead, and he had promised himself that he would never allow himself to love someone again. The risk of loss was too great. The next morning he was drier than usual. He answered the children with monosyllables, completely ignored Lily, and left for work without saying goodbye. She was confused by the sudden change but didn't ask anything. She had learned from a young age to recognize when men were irritated, and knew it was better to remain invisible at those times. But the children felt the difference. Ethan started having nightmares again, Mia stopped drawing colorful birds, and Sophie locked herself in her room. Martha sighed and shook her head, knowing Alexander's moods well. "He's afraid," she said to Lily as they prepared lunch. "Afraid of caring again." "Afraid of me?" asked Lily, genuinely confused. "Afraid of what you make him feel," Martha corrected. "Mrs. Emma was the great love of his life. When she died, he swore he would never open up to anyone again. But you came here and changed everything without even trying." Lily processed these words in silence. She hadn't tried to change anything, just to exist. But perhaps that was exactly what bothered Alexander. She didn't ask for anything, didn't demand attention, didn't try to seduce him. She was just there, being herself, and somehow that touched him more deeply than any strategy could have. That night, Alexander came home drunk. Not completely drunk, but enough for his defenses to be down. He entered his office and stared at the armchair where Emma used to sit to read while he worked. The armchair had been empty for 5 years, but that night he could almost see her, there smiling with that infinite patience she always had with his moods. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the empty armchair. "I didn't want to feel this for another person." That's when he heard footsteps in the hallway. Lily appeared at the office door, dressed in a robe that Martha had lent her. She had heard him arrive and had left her room to make sure he was okay. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. Alexander looked at her for a long moment. She was barefoot, her hair loose, her eyes full of genuine concern. There was something maternal in her posture, but also something deeply feminine that hit him like a punch to the stomach. "No," he answered with brutal honesty. "I haven't been okay for 5 years." Lily entered the office and closed the door behind her. She approached slowly, as if dealing with an injured animal. "Do you want to talk about it?" "There's nothing to talk about." He poured himself another. Whiskey, his hands trembling slightly. "My wife died. I died with her. That's it." "But you didn't die," said Lily, sitting on the edge of the desk. "You're still here. You still take care of the children. You still work. You still live." "This isn't living," he retorted. "This is just continuing." Lily was silent for a moment. Then, with a surprising movement, she knelt beside his chair and placed her hand on his arm. "I understand," she said. "I too just continued for a long time until I came here." Alexander looked at her, really looked. He saw the almost imperceptible scar on her neck, left by the childhood infection. He saw the way she kept her shoulders slightly curved, as if still protecting herself from blows that might come. He saw strength and fragility, coexisting in the same small body. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured, but didn't move away from her touch. "Where should I be?" she asked. He didn't know how to answer, because the truth was that he couldn't imagine Lily anywhere else. She had become part of that house, part of the children's lives, part of his daily routine. And as much as it frightened him, he didn't want her to leave. The storm arrived on a March dawn, bringing thunder that echoed through the mountains like war cries. Lily woke up startled, not by the lightning that tore through the sky, but by the sound of crying coming from the hallway. It was Ethan, once again trapped in his nightmares. She got up and went to his room, where she found the boy huddled in bed, trembling and calling for his mother. "It's okay," she whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed and running her hand through his sweaty hair. "It was just a bad dream." "She's not coming back, is she?" asked Ethan, his large eyes shining in the darkness. "Mum's not coming back." Lily felt her heart break. "No, dear, she's not coming back. But she left you, your sisters, and your father. She left her love in you." The boy nestled against her, and Lily stayed there, humming softly a song that her own mother had sung to her before dying. When Ethan finally fell asleep, she got up to return to her room but found Alexander standing at the door. He was barefoot, wearing only pajama pants, his bare torso revealing scars she had never seen before. His face was tense, his eyes fixed, on her with an intensity that made her instinctively back away. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice low and hoarse. "Do what?" "Take care of them as if they were your children." Lily stared at him. "They are wounded children. I know what it's like to be a wounded child." "They are not your responsibility." "Nothing here is my responsibility," she retorted, a spark of anger shining in her eyes. "I could have been on the street, could have died in that warehouse. You brought me here, gave me a roof, food, care. You owe me nothing, but I also owe nothing to you. If I take care of the children, it's because I want to." Alexander took a step toward her, and Lily felt the air grow heavy between them. There was something dangerous in the way he looked at her, something that made her skin tingle and her heart race. "You don't know what you're doing," he said, his voice even lower. "I know exactly what I'm doing," she replied, not backing down. "I'm living. For the first time in my life, I'm really living." A thunderclap exploded in the sky, and the lightning illuminated Alexander's face for a second. Lily saw pain there, desire, fear, all mixed in an expression that made her tremble inside. He stretched out his hand and touched her face, his thumb tracing a soft line along her cheek. "You're going to destroy me," he murmured. "Or you'll save me," she replied, covering his hand with hers. For a moment, they stayed like that, connected, by a simple touch that carried the weight of everything they couldn't say. Then Alexander pulled away abruptly, as if he had been burned. "Go to sleep," he said, returning to his room and closing the door forcefully. Lily stood there in the hallway, her heart beating so hard she could hear it over the rain. Something had changed that night. A line had been crossed, even if only in thought. In the days that followed, Alexander tried to return to his routine of distancing, but couldn't. He found himself looking at Lily when she wasn't watching, noticing small details that had gone unnoticed before. The way she bit her lower lip when she was concentrating, how her eyes lit up when the children laughed, the graceful way she moved through the house, as if dancing to music only she could hear. Martha noticed the growing tension and decided to intervene. One afternoon, while Alexander was working in his office, she entered without knocking. "You need to stop this," she said without preamble. "Stop what?" "Running from that girl as if she were a contagious disease." Alexander looked up from his papers. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I know you're not stupid, Alexander. You like Lily, you really like her, and she likes you too." "That's ridiculous." "What's ridiculous is you thinking that Mrs. Emma would want you to spend the rest of your life alone," Martha retorted. "She was a generous woman. She would never wish for you to close yourself off this way." Alexander was silent, Martha's words echoing in his mind. Emma had indeed been generous. In her last days, she had made him promise that he would be happy, that he wouldn't lock himself in eternal mourning, but it was easier to promise than to fulfill. "Lily is very young," he said finally. "She's 22 and has already gone through more suffering than many people go through in a lifetime," replied Martha. "Age isn't just measured in years. She deserves someone better. She deserves someone who loves her, and you deserve a second chance to be happy." That night, Alexander found Lily in the garden again, sitting by the fountain. She was reading a book she had borrowed from his library, a collection of poems by Emily Dickinson. He approached quietly, without making noise. "Do you like poetry?" he asked. Lily looked up, surprised. "I never had much opportunity to read, but this book, the words are beautiful, they make sense." "What's your favorite poem?" She flipped through the book until she found a marked page. This one, "I'm Nobody." "Who are you? Are you nobody too?" "I've always felt that way, neither completely sad nor completely happy, just me." Alexander sat beside her on the stone bench. "Do you consider yourself a poet?" "I don't know how to write," she admitted. "But I think I feel things as a poet would, very deeply, very intensely." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the sound of running water. Then Alexander made a decision that would change everything. "Lily," he said, his voice laden with contained emotion, "I need to tell you something about why I really brought you here." She closed the book and looked at him, preparing to hear the truth he had kept all those months. Alexander took a deep breath before speaking. "When I saw you in that place, the first thing I thought was that you were going to die. Not from the disease, not from the men who kept you there. You were going to die because you had given up. I recognized that because I had given up too." Lily remained silent, but her body tensed. She could feel he was about to reveal something important. "After Emma died, I entered a state I don't even know how to describe. It wasn't just sadness. It was as if I had died with her, but my body had forgotten to stop functioning. I took care of the children, worked, kept up appearances, but inside, I was empty. Completely empty." He stopped, ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she had learned to recognize as a sign of nervousness. "I brought you here because I thought it would be perfect. Someone who was also dead inside. Someone who wouldn't expect love from me, who wouldn't try to heal me, who wouldn't make me feel guilty for not being able to love again. I thought we could live here. 2 ghosts taking care of 3 children, all pretending we were alive." His words fell like stones into the still water of the lake. Lily felt a strange pain in her chest, as if something was breaking and mending at the same time. "But you didn't stay dead," he continued, his voice growing hoarser. "You began to live. You began to care for the children not out of obligation, but out of love. You began to smile, to laugh, to make this house feel like a home again. And I began to feel alive too. Against my will, against all my plans, against everything I had decided about my life. Lily finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you regret bringing me here?" "Every day," he answered with brutal honesty, "and every day I thank God I had the courage to do it." She turned to look at him directly. "You're afraid of me. I'm afraid of what you make me feel. I'm afraid of falling in love with you and having to go through what I went through with Emma. I'm afraid of you discovering that you deserve better than a broken 43-year-old man. And I'm afraid of you discovering that I'm not the strong woman you think I am," she retorted. "I'm afraid of you sending me away when you realize I'm just a scared girl who knows nothing about love." Alexander extended his hand and touched her face, as he had done on the night of the storm. "You know more about love than you think. I've seen you love my children as if they were your own. I've seen you love this house, this life, even knowing you could lose it at any moment." "And you?" she asked, covering his hand with hers. "Could you love me?" The question hung in the air between them. Alexander closed his eyes, as if fighting an internal battle. When he opened them again, there was something different in them. A decision. "I already love you," he said. "I hate to admit it, hate being so weak, but I love you. I love the way you take care of the children, how you treat Martha, how you move through the house as if you belonged here. I love your silent strength, your ability to find beauty in simple things. I even love your stubbornness and your refusal to be intimidated by me." Lily felt tears spring to her eyes. "I love you too," she whispered. "I don't know when it happened, but it did. I love your dedication to the children, even when you think you're not a good father. I love your intelligence, your honesty, even your grumpiness. I love the way you fight against your own feelings because you're afraid of getting hurt again." Alexander pulled her closer until she was sitting in his lap. "This is madness," he murmured, pushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then let's be mad," she replied and kissed him. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, as if both were testing unknown territory. Then it became more intense, more urgent, 5 months of tension and repressed desire exploding between them. Alexander held her as if she might disappear, and Lily surrendered completely, feeling alive in a way she had never experienced before. When they separated, both were breathless. Alexander rested his forehead against hers, still processing what had happened. "And now?" he asked. "Now we live," she replied. "One day at a time. No impossible promises, no grand plans. We just live." He smiled, and it was as if the sun had risen in the middle of the night. "Will you be mine, officially?" "I will," she said, "but you need to promise me one thing." "Anything." "Promise that you won't treat me like I'm made of glass. I've broken before and survived. I can break again if necessary." Alexander chuckled softly. "You're stronger than glass," he said. "You're like a diamond, beautiful, precious, and practically indestructible." That night, they walked back to the house hand in hand, knowing their lives had changed forever. There were obstacles ahead, problems they would have to face, but at that moment, under the stars of the mountains, they were just two survivors who had found in each other the courage to live again. The following days were like living in a delicate dream that both feared to break. Alexander and Lily maintained appearances during the day, but exchanged looks laden with promises and stole, moments of intimacy when no one was looking. A touch of hands as they passed plates at the table, a quick kiss in the hallway when the children were distracted, whispered conversations in the garden after everyone was asleep. The children noticed the change, even without fully understanding it. Sophie began to smile more, Ethan stopped having nightmares so frequently, and Mia started drawing birds with colorful wings again. Martha observed everything with a discreet smile, happy to see the house finally coming back to life. But their happiness was interrupted on a Tuesday morning when 3 men appeared at the property gate. Lily recognized them immediately. They were from the same network that had held her captive. The leader, a short, fat man named Morris, asked to speak with Alexander. "We know you're harboring our merchandise," said Morris, sitting in the living room as if he were a respectable guest. "The girl you took from the warehouse, she wasn't legally sold." Alexander kept his voice controlled, but Lily could see the tension in his shoulders. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any merchandise of yours." "Don't play. Dumb, Mr. Reed. Your reputation is important for your business, isn't it? Imagine if the press found out you were involved in human trafficking. Your shareholders, your clients, everyone would know." The blackmail was clear. Lily, who was listening hidden behind the door, felt her blood freeze. She had brought problems to Alexander, exactly as she always knew she would. People like her didn't deserve happiness without consequences. "How much do you want?" asked Alexander, and Lily could hear the contained anger in his voice. $50,000. "And the girl back?" "The girl stays. I'll pay the money." "It's not just about money, Mr. Reed. She ran away." "That can't go unpunished. It sets a bad example for the others." Lily couldn't bear to hear more. She came out of her hiding place and entered the room, ignoring Alexander's alarmed look. The three men turned to her and Morris smiled with cruelty. "There she is. She looks quite different from the last time I saw her. Bath, clean clothes, even gained a little weight. Mr. Reed took good care of our property." "She is not your property," said Alexander, standing up. "She's not anyone's property. We bought her from her father. We have the papers." "Fake papers are worth nothing." Morris laughed. "They're worth enough to create a nice scandal. Imagine the headlines: 'Billionaire businessman buys girl from traffickers.' Your business wouldn't survive that." Lily looked at Alexander and saw the conflict in his eyes. He was a powerful man, but he couldn't fight against scandals and lies without exposing himself. She made the decision she knew she would have to make since the first day. "I'll go with you," she said calmly. "No," Alexander replied immediately. "You're not going anywhere. I can't let them destroy your life because of me. I can't do that to you and the children. Lily, no, we'll find another solution." But she had already made her decision. That night, after everyone was asleep, she packed her few things in a small bag. She left a letter for Alexander on top of his office desk, explaining that she couldn't allow him to lose everything because of her, that she loved him too much to let that happen. She left the house at dawn, walking down the dirt road that led to town. She had no plans, only knew she had to leave. Maybe she would look for a women's shelter, maybe try to start over somewhere else. The important thing was that Alexander and the children were safe, but she didn't get very far. The walk in the cold dawn, combined with the emotion and stress, made her pneumonia return with full force. She managed to reach a bus stop by the roadside, but there she collapsed, feverish and almost unconscious. It was a truck driver who found her early in the morning and took her to the nearest hospital. The doctors said she had arrived just in time. A few more hours and she wouldn't have survived. Lily was hospitalized for 3 days, delirious with fever, calling for Alexander and the children. Alexander discovered she had fled when he woke, up and found the letter. He went crazy with despair, went out looking for her with security guards, searched hospitals, police stations, shelters. When he finally found her, admitted to a public ward, she was as pale as paper, her lips purplish, breathing with difficulty. "You idiot," he whispered, taking her hand. "You brave idiot." Lily opened her eyes and saw him there, sitting beside the bed, with deep shadows under his eyes and an unshaven face. "You shouldn't be here," she said in a weak voice. "I should be where you are." "Always," he replied. "No. Matter what happens, we face it together. You don't run away from me anymore, understand? And the men, the blackmail? Resolved. I paid the money and even got some interesting information about their activities. Let's just say they won't be bothering anyone anymore." Lily looked at him with admiration. "You're more dangerous than I thought." "Only when someone messes with those I love," he replied, kissing her hand. "Now you're going to recover, you're going to come home, and you're never going to try to protect me by running away again. Deal." "Deal," she whispered, closing her eyes, finally at peace. 3 days later, Alexander took her back to Highland Falls. The children received her with hugs and tears. and even Sophie whispered an almost imperceptible "welcome back." Lily knew she had gone through another test, another ordeal, but this time she hadn't come out losing. She had come out stronger, more loved, more certain that she belonged to this strange and wonderful family. Lily's recovery was slow, but surrounded by care and love. Alexander no longer went on business trips, delegating everything he could to stay close to her. He himself brought meals to the room, checked her temperature, made sure she took her medicines at the right times. It was an almost obsessive dedication, as if he feared she would disappear if he lowered his guard for a second. "You need to stop watching me like I'm going to run away again," said Lily one afternoon, sitting in bed with a book in her lap. "I'm not leaving here even if they paid me." "You ran away once," he replied, arranging the pillows behind her. "You proved you're capable of making idiotic decisions when you think you're protecting me." "Idiotic decisions?" She raised an eyebrow. "I was trying to save your reputation, your business, your life, and almost died in the process. Do you think I care about business if you're not here to share all this with me?" The intensity in his voice made her stop arguing. There was something deeper there, a fear that went beyond the possibility of scandal or blackmail. It was the fear of losing again, of having to bury another love. "Alexander," she said softly, pulling him to sit beside her on the bed. "I'm not Emma. I'm not going to die of cancer. I'm not going to leave you a widower again. But you need to understand that I'm afraid too." "Afraid of what?" "Of not being enough. Of you waking up one day and realizing you saved a broken girl who will never be able to give you what you need. Of finding out that I don't know how to be a wife, don't know how to be a mother, don't know how to be anything but a survivor." Alexander looked at her for a long moment, then pulled her into his arms. "You think I know how to be anything other than a man who lost the woman he loved and almost lost himself in the process? We're both improvising, Lily. We're learning together." She snuggled against him, breathing in the scent of his skin, feeling the warmth of his body. "I want to be your wife," she whispered. "I want to be a mother to your children. I want to grow old by your side and argue about silly things and love you even when you're grumpy and impossible." "Then marry me," he said, just like that. Lily pulled back to look at him. "Seriously?" "Seriously. I don't want to live in fear of losing you anymore. I want you to be my wife officially, legally, in the eyes of God and everyone. But what if people talk? A rich man like you marrying a girl who came from human trafficking?" "Let them talk," he replied, kissing her forehead. "I've already learned that other people's opinions don't warm anyone in bed, don't care for wounded children, don't make a house a home. You do all that." Lily felt tears spring to her eyes. "I accept," she whispered. "I accept being your wife, your companion, the mother of your children. I accept everything that comes with it." The proposal wasn't romantic in the traditional sense. There was no kneeling, no expensive ring, no elaborate production. It was just two survivors deciding to build a life together, with all the imperfections and scars that implied. But the children's reaction was everything they could have wished for. When they told them at dinner, Mia shouted with joy. Ethan laughed for the first time in months, and Sophie surprised everyone by speaking for the first time since her mother's death. "You're going to be our real mother?" she asked, her voice hoarse from so much time without use. "If you want," replied Lily, tears streaming down her face, "I would very much like to be your mother." "We want," said Sophie. "We want very much." Martha watched everything from the kitchen door, wiping away tears with her apron. Then she approached and hugged Lily tightly. "Welcome to the family, child," she said, officially this time. The preparations for the wedding began the following week. Alexander wanted something simple, just family and a few close friends. Lily had no family to invite, but that didn't bother her. Her family was now here in this house, with these people who had welcomed her when she had nothing. The dress was chosen by Martha and the children, a simple white silk model that enhanced Lily's natural beauty. There was no veil, no long train, just her and the promise of a future built on true love. 3 weeks before the wedding, Alexander took her to see the courthouse where they would marry and then have the ceremony in the garden. On the way, he stopped the car at a panoramic view of the mountains. "There's something I need to give you," he said, taking a small velvet box from his pocket. Lily opened the box and found a simple ring, a white gold band with a small solitaire diamond. It was delicate, elegant, perfect for her. "It was my grandmother's," explained Alexander. "She gave it to me before she died, said I should give it to the woman who would be able to make my heart beat again." "Are you sure?" she asked, looking at the ring. "Isn't it too soon? Aren't we moving too fast?" "Lily, I've loved you for months. You saved me from myself, brought my family back to life, taught me that it's possible to start over. If this is too fast, then so be it. I'd rather live one whole year with you than a lifetime without you." She let him place the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. That afternoon, sitting in the car with a view of the mountains, they planned the rest of their lives. There would be no extravagant honeymoon, no gigantic party, nothing beyond what really mattered: love, family, and the courage to build something new on the ruins of what they had lost. The wedding week brought a different bustle to Highland Falls. Martha commanded the preparations with military efficiency, organizing flowers, food, decorations, while the children helped with contagious enthusiasm. Mia had drawn special invitations for each guest, all with birds with colorful wings, flying toward the sun. Ethan helped arrange the chairs in the garden, and Sophie, who now spoke more each day, had offered to be the ring-bearer. Lily watched everything with a mixture of enchantment and nervousness. She had never imagined she would have a wedding, much less a wedding surrounded by so much love and care. Every detail was being thought out, not just for her and Alexander, but for the entire family they were making official. 2 days before the ceremony, Alexander found her in the room, trying on the dress for the last time. He stopped at the door, watching her in the mirror, and she saw his reflection behind her. "You shouldn't see me in the dress before the wedding," she said, but she was smiling. "I don't believe in those superstitions," he replied, approaching. "Besides, we've seen each other at our worst. A wedding dress won't break any spell." He hugged her from behind, and she leaned against his chest, feeling the solidity of his presence. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "A little. It's strange to think that tomorrow I'll have a different last name, a family officially mine, a place in the world that no one can take from me." "Lily Reed," he said, testing the sound. "It suits you." "Does it?" she laughed. "Sounds like an important woman's name." "You are an important woman. Important to me, to the children, to Martha, to everyone lucky enough to know you." She turned in his arms. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that I'm here with you, about to get married, with 3 children who love me. It seems like a dream." "If it's a dream, I hope never to wake up," he replied, kissing her softly. On the eve of the wedding, Martha organized a special dinner just for the family. The table was decorated with flowers from the garden, candles, and the best china in the house. It was an intimate celebration, just the people who really mattered. During dessert, Alexander stood up to make a toast. "I want to thank everyone here today. Martha, who cared for this family when I couldn't. Sophie, Ethan, and Mia, who taught me that love doesn't diminish when it's divided, it only grows. And Lily." He paused, emotional. "Lily, who arrived here as a stranger and became the heart of this house, who taught me that it's possible to start over, that it's possible to love again without betraying what was lost. Tomorrow you'll become my wife, but the truth is, you've been my family for a long time." Lily stood up and hugged him, tears flowing freely. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving me, for loving me, for giving me a home." "Thank you," he replied, "for saving me too." The children joined in the hug, and Martha couldn't hold back her tears. There at that table, in that house that had been so sad for so long, a new family was officially being born. That night, for the first time since they met, Alexander and Lily slept in separate rooms. It was a tradition that Martha had insisted on keeping, even though they had been sharing a bed for weeks. Lily stayed in the guest room looking out the window at the garden where she would marry the next day. She thought about her life, about how she had gotten here, The girl who was sold by her father no longer existed. The frightened young woman who had been rescued from a dirty warehouse was also gone. In their place was a woman ready to be a wife, mother, companion. A woman who had found her strength through love. On the morning of the wedding, Lily woke to the sun coming through the window. Martha brought breakfast in bed, a luxury she had insisted on providing. The children entered the room next, all dressed up and perfumed, eager to start the preparations. "Today, you'll be our real mother," said Mia, snuggling beside her in bed. "I'm already your mother," replied Lily, kissing the girl's forehead. "The wedding will just make official what already exists." The day passed in a haze of preparations. Relaxing bath, simple hair and makeup, dress, shoes, flowers. When Lily finally looked at herself in the mirror, ready for the ceremony, she saw a radiant, happy, complete woman. Martha was crying when she came down the stairs. "Mrs. Emma would be happy," she said. "She would be happy to know that Mr. Alexander found love again." "Do you really think so?" asked Lily. "I'm sure. She was a generous woman. She would never wish for him to be alone forever." Outside in the garden, the few guests were already seated. Close friends of Alexander's, some colleagues from work, the doctor who had cared for Lily. Nothing grandiose, just the people who really mattered. Alexander waited for her by the fountain, dressed in an elegant black suit, his eyes fixed on the entrance where she would appear. When he saw her, his face transformed. There was love there, admiration, gratitude, and a happiness she had never seen before. Lily walked toward him, not to the sound of an elaborate wedding march, but to the sound of a guitar that a friend of Alexander's played softly. With each step, she felt stronger, more secure, more certain that she was doing the right thing. When she reached him, Alexander extended his hand and she took it. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," she replied, and they turned to the officiant, ready to officially begin the life they had already been living for months. The ceremony was simple and deeply moving. The officiant, a judge friend of Alexander's, conducted the vows with solemnity, but also with human warmth. When it came time for personal vows, Alexander held Lily's hands and spoke with a firm voice, but laden with emotion. "Lily, when I found you, I was dead inside. You brought me back to life, taught me that it's possible to love again without forgetting what was lost. I promise to love and protect you, respect and support you, in good times and difficult ones. I promise to be the man you deserve, the father our children need, the companion who will always be by your side." Lily took a deep breath before speaking, the words coming straight from her heart. "Alexander, you saved me when I didn't even know I needed to be saved. You gave me a family, a home, a reason to believe I was worth something. I promise to love you with all the intensity I have, to care for you and our children, to be your companion at all times. I promise that I will never run away again when things get difficult, because I've learned that true love isn't about protection, it's about facing everything together." When they exchanged rings, Sophie approached carrying a small satin pillow where the rings were placed. She smiled at Lily, a genuine and joyful smile that showed how the girl had healed over those months. "By the power vested in me by the law, I pronounce you husband and wife," said the judge. "You may kiss the bride." The kiss was soft, full of promises and gratitude. As they separated, Alexander whispered in Lily's ear, "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Reed." "Thank you for accepting me, Mr. Reed," she replied, laughing through tears. The party that followed was small but joyful. Martha had prepared a simple but delicious banquet with dishes that Lily had learned to love during her stay at Highland Falls. There was music, dancing, laughter, and many shared stories. When night came and the guests began to say goodbye, the family gathered in the garden. The children, tired but happy, cuddled around the couple. Mia fell asleep in Lily's lap. Ethan rested his head on Alexander's shoulder, and Sophie sat between them, finally at peace. "Now we're a real family," said Sophie, her voice still a little hoarse but full of contentment. "We always were," replied Lily, caressing the girl's hair. "The paper just made it official." Later, when the children were already asleep and Martha had retired, Alexander and Lily were alone in the room they now officially shared. She was sitting on the bed, still wearing the wedding dress, slowly taking off her shoes. "Any regrets?" he asked, watching her. "Never," she replied, turning to look at him. "And you?" "Impossible. You're the best thing that's happened to me since forever." He approached and helped her remove the simple veil she had worn, then began to unbutton the dress carefully. Each gesture was delicate, reverent, as if he were unwrapping the most precious gift in the world. "I love you," he whispered, kissing her neck. "I love you too," she replied, turning to kiss him. They made love that night with a different intensity, not just as two people who desired each other, but as husband and wife, as a complete family. There was passion, but also tenderness, gratitude, and the silent promise that this was forever. Afterward, lying in bed, she nestled against his chest. They talked about the future, about trips they wanted to take with the children, about improvements to the house, about the life they were building together. "Have you ever thought about having more children?" Alexander suddenly asked. Lily was silent for a moment. "You know I can't," she said, her voice neutral. "I know. But there are other ways. Adoption, for example. There are so many children who need a home like you needed." She pulled back to look at him. "Would you like that?" "I would, but only if you want to. There's no rush, no pressure, just a possibility for the future." "I would love that," she admitted. "I would love to give other children what you gave me. A second chance, a family, love. Then maybe that's what we'll do," he said, kissing her forehead. "When we're ready, when the children are older, maybe we can open our home to someone else. Who needs it?" Lily smiled, imagining Highland Falls full of children, full of life, full of love. "It would be perfect," she murmured. 6 months later, on a spring morning, Lily was in the garden with the children when she saw Alexander approaching with a folder of documents in his hand. He had a strange expression, a mixture of nervousness and joy. "What's that?" she asked. "Adoption papers," he replied. "For the children. I want you to be legally their mother, not just in heart." Lily looked at Sophie, Ethan, and Mia, who were watching the conversation with interest. "Do you want this?" she asked them. "We do," replied Sophie without hesitation. "We want you to be our real mother, on paper too." "Then let's do it," said Lily, signing the documents with trembling hands. That afternoon, sitting in the magnolia garden where she had married, surrounded by the husband she loved and the children she had gained, Lily thought about the girl she had been. That girl who thought she was worth nothing, who didn't deserve love, who was destined to suffer forever. She had died, that girl. Died so that a woman could be born, a loved, respected woman, mother, wife, owner of her own life. A woman who had learned that true love doesn't diminish when it's divided. It only multiplies. And as she watched her children play in the garden, hearing Alexander's laughter on the phone with a client, feeling the warm mountain breeze on her face, Lily knew she had found her place in the world, not as the broken girl she had been, but as the strong woman she had chosen to become. Life wasn't perfect, it never would be. There would be challenges, difficulties, hard times. But she was no longer alone. She had a family, had love, had a home. And that was more than she had dreamed possible when she was sitting in that damp warehouse, waiting for death to come.